Hi there everyone, and today we are going to be talking about slope. As you guys saw from last week, we talked about slope from just a graph, but now we're going to be talking about today from a table as well as taking it from 2 points. Alright, so hopefully you guys remembered some of this stuff from last year already. This should really be a review, but if we take a look, for when I take the slope from a table, we're always looking at the change in the y values over the change in the x values. So we would just count and see what are the y values going up by, what are the x values going up by. And you'll see me write this. Change in y is a triangle, that means delta. Okay, not delta math, but like that's the change in y all over the change in x. So the change in y here, to go from 7 to 3, we subtracted 4. To go from 3 to -1, we subtract 4. So the change in y is -4. Over, to go from 0 to 1, we added 1. From 1 to 2, we added 1. So my slope would be here, -4. So that's just looking at it from a table. If we look at it from 2 points, okay, if we had these 2 points, x1, y1, and x2, y2, again, it's always that change in y over the change in x, where we take y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, and that's our slope. And if I want to use that actually from this graph here, we can do that. So we have the point here of 0, 7, and we have another point here of 1, 3. So we can actually plug this in for my change in y over the change in x. So I'm going to label this. This is my x1, y1. This is my x2, y2. Okay, that's what these values are. Okay, so if I do again, the slope is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Well, y2 is 3 minus y1 is 7 all over x2 is 1 and x1 is 0. So I end up getting -4 over 1 and I get a slope of -4. Now, if we were to take a look at this graphically, okay, using these 2 points, I'm going to rise up by 4. Remember, we're looking at that rise over run. So we rise up by 4, and I'm going to run to the left by 1. Because I'm going to the left, that's -1. So again, simplify this. And look at that. We just did this in 3 different ways, with the slope all being -4. So that's how we know we did this right. Okay, and as you guys can see, this was all done on page 3. Okay. Now let's take a look over at page 4. Okay, so let's take a look at page 4. We're going to start to calculate slope just as we did before, taking the change in the y values over the change in the x values. And if we look at this first example here, so I can see my y values are going up by 0, right? I'm just adding by 0 each time. And my x values are going up by 1. Remember, these have to be going up by the same amount. If I had something like this, plus 1, 2, and 3, well, there's no slope. This is obviously not a constant rate of change. Okay, so they have to be going up by the same amount. That's very important. Otherwise, there's no slope. No average rate of change for us to calculate. Okay, so the change in y we just saw is going up by 0. And the change in x, we're going up by 1. 0 over 1, guys, be careful here. 0 over 1 is just 0. So I have a 0 slope. Okay, that's a 0 slope. For those of you that are my go-getters and can recognize the kind of equation this is, do you guys see how all the y values are 3? Do you know what the equation of this line would be? Because all the y values are the same, right? If I were to sketch this, all my y values are the same. They're all at 3, and I've got that 0 slope. So this would actually be the equation y equals 3 if I asked for it. Okay. Let's take a look at the second example. You guys will do the third one. Okay, so you guys are going to do the third example here. That's for you to work on your own. We're going to do the second one, and I'll post the answer for 3. Okay, so this is the second one. We just did the first. Okay, so for the second one again, we want to see what's the change in y. Are they all going up by the same amount? And they sure are. We're adding by 1 each time. So we have the change in y over the change in x. So the change in y is 1. Over, what are my x values going up by? And they're all going up by 3. So I have a slope of 1/3. That's it. Slope is 1/3. All All right, so why don't you guys pause the video here and see if you can come up with the answer for question 3 there. All right, and there you guys have the answer for question 3, if you just want to check your work with mine. Okay, so we have the change in y, we're going down by 1. The change in x is 0. Negative 1 over 0 is undefined. And again, for those of you that can actually see this, because it's an undefined slope, remember that's a vertical line. And our equation is with x equaling negative 2, because all my x values are at negative 2. Okay, let's move on. We did these graphs already in class, so now let's take a look at calculating slope with 2 points. So I'm going to label my points here. So here is my x1, y1, x2, y2. Okay, and we're just going to follow our formula. It's the change in y over the change in x. So I have 2 minus 7 over 5 minus 1. And you guys have calculators. 2 minus 7 is negative 5. 5 minus 1 is 4. So there you go. I've got a slope. Okay, slope we always write as m equals is negative 5 over 4. Good. That's it. Okay. I'm going to do the second example. So this was the first example. I'm going to do the second one with you, and you guys are going to do the third on your own. So for our second example, again, I'm going to label x1, y1, x2, y2. Helps to organize ourselves. So I have y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1 is our slope. And I can see here's y2 at negative 3 minus 4, because that's our y1. So we have minus 4 over, how about we just keep up with the color coding? We have x2, which is negative 2, minus, don't forget the minus, okay, minus, we have negative 2. I'm going to put that in parentheses. All right. And if I simplify this, guys, you have a calculator. I get negative 7 over 0. And that is undefined. If I asked you to write the equation of that line, remember, this is talking about a vertical line. A vertical line. Well, let's see. Both of our x values are negative 2. So if I have a vertical line on the x and y axes, so if I have a vertical line, it's going to look something like this. And both of my x values are negative 2. So if I were to plot the point at negative 2, positive 4, and negative 2, negative 3, well, there's my equation. X equaling negative 2. If I asked you for the equation. But for the slope, we would just say it's undefined. All right, why don't you guys try the third example? Pause the video here and see if you get the same answer as me. All right, and there is your answer for the third question there. You should get your slope to be positive 4. All right. Okay, so let's move on to the next page. Now, this is where your calculator is going to come into very, very handy. So why don't you guys get your calculators out? All right, so this is actually really neat. What I'm going to show you guys is how to find the slope and the equation of a line given 2 points. Okay, so given those 2 points, we're going to actually use the calculator to find this for us. So if you guys take out your calculators, we're going to turn it on. I want you guys to click this stat button right here. Okay, so everyone should be clicking stat. Okay, after we click stat, so we did that, we're going to click enter on edit. I'm going to click enter on edit, and we're going to type in L1 the x values. So right now I have these points listed as 3, 3, and 4, 7. I like to write them one underneath the other. Okay, where here are my x values, and here are my y values. So in L1, I'm going to type, and you know what, let me make this actually a little bit clearer for us to read. Okay, so we have x, y, and I said we're making those points 3, 3, 4, 7. All right, that's a little bit easier to read. So in our L1 column here, I'm going to enter in these x values. I'm going to enter in these x values. So let's type 3, enter, 4, enter. Okay, so that takes care of L1. Now we want to take a look at L2. L2 are going to be the y values. So in L2, I'm going to enter the y values. So that's going to go right here. All right. So I have, go over to the right, hit the right-hand arrow, 3, enter, 7, enter. Okay. So now that we have our points entered in, again, guys, the steps are all here. They're all outlined for you here. We went to stat. Okay, so where's my stat button? Oh, there we go. Stat, enter on edit. We entered our x values in the L1 column, x values in the L1 column, and our y values in the L2 column. Okay, and if you need to go back and rewind, whatever you need. Okay. Now, our next step, going through this very slow, we're going to go back to stat. So I'm going to go back to stat. I'm going to scroll over where I see calc. So I'm going to hit this right arrow, click on calc. Okay, click on calc. And we're going to scroll down to number 4, that says linear regression of ax plus b. So I'm going to scroll all the way down to 4, click enter. All the way down to 4, click enter. We're almost there. Okay, we're almost there. All right, well, now that we've clicked enter, okay, you want to make sure your X list says L1 and your Y list says L2. Now say you don't have that, okay? So let's start from scratch. Say there's nothing there. There's nothing there, so I'm going to clear it out. So we're going to clear that out. Oh, why isn't this working? Okay, we want to clear that out. So if I want to enter in L1 for my X list, you guys are going to click second 1. So to get L1, you're going to click second 1. I'll do that again. Second 1. There's L1. Enter. Now we want L2. So again, say there was nothing there. If I want L2, I'm going to click second button. So let's clear that out. Say there was nothing there. Second 2. Second 2, and that gets me L2. You're going to click enter, 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 enter. Now I have the equation of my line. Now your calculator uses A for the slope. You guys are used to M being the slope. For whatever reason, your calculator says, let's use A for the slope. Okay, so your calculator uses A for the slope, but this is the same thing as y equals mx plus b. It's the same thing. So in this case, A is your slope, B is your y-intercept. So by using the calculator from the points that we were given up here, 3, 3, and 4, 7, we found the equation of the line to be, well, now we just got to fill it in. If we know the equation is y equals ax plus b, where a is 4 and b is -9, let's just rewrite it. We then have the equation of y equals 4x minus 9. That would be the equation of the line, where -9 is the y-intercept and 4 is your slope. Okay, if you guys need to go back and rewind, please do so. These are really important calculator steps. Okay, now let's take a look. We're actually going to skip ahead all the way over to page 8. So over on page 8, okay, so we actually kind of just talked about this already. We have the equation y equals mx plus b, where m is our slope and b is our y-intercept. Okay, we showed how to do this on the calculator, how to find that. So if we take a look now at this first question here, we're going to take a look at question 3. Okay, question 3. We're going to do this one together. We have an airplane starts to descend at an altitude of 5,500 feet. At what rate is the airplane descending? So we have a few options here, guys. We're going to eventually come up with the equation of the line, right? We're going to eventually come up with the equation of the line. So why don't we just use the calculator method that I just showed you, right? Why not use the calculator method I just showed you? Now, in order for us to come up with the equation of the line, remember, we need 2 points, right? In that other example, we had those 2 points. I think it was 3, 3, and 4, 7. Well, now here, look at my graph gives me 2 points. So I've got the point 100, 4,000, and I've got the point 300, 1,000, right? So remember what I did in that other example, though. I like to write them one below the other. So we have 100, 4,000, and then we had 300, 1,000. Okay, so here's X. Here is Y. So we're going to go over to the calculator. All right, so let's see if anyone remembers the steps. So I'm going to turn my calculator back on. If you guys remember to quit out of the screen, second mode. To quit out of the screen, we're going to click second mode. And now we want to come up with, at the very end, it wants the equation of the line, right? It wants the equation of the line. So remember, the first thing we're going to click is stat. We click stat and enter on edit. Okay, now remember, the first column, okay, the first column is L1, the second column is L2. Okay, L2 is the same thing as Y, and L1 is the same thing as X. Okay, so these will be my X values, and these will be my Y values that we input. Now to clear out what's in here, I'm just going to scroll up to the top, clear, enter. Move over to the side, scroll up to the top, clear, enter. Okay, now I just cleared everything out of L1 and L2. Okay, now we want to start to input the values. So remember, for L1, we want not 1,000, I keep saying 1,000, 100. So we're going to have 100, 300, and then for L2, we'll have that 4,000 and 1,000. Okay, so let's actually enter that information in. We have 100, enter, 300, enter. Move over to the right column. 4,000, enter, 1,000, enter. Now that I have all of my information in, remember, we go back to stat. Go back to stat. Go over to calc. So move over to the right for calc. And we're selecting number 4. Selecting number 4, which is a linear regression, y equals ax plus b, which is the same thing as y equaling mx plus b. So I'm going to scroll down to number 4, enter. Look at that. I've already got my L1 and my L2 here. Awesome. I'm just going to scroll all the way down, guys, to calculate. Okay, so I already had my information there for L1 and L2. So we're good. We're going to scroll all the way down to calculate, click enter, and there is my equation of the line. There is my equation of the line. Y equals negative 15x plus 5,500. Okay, so again, I'll write this on the side. We have y equals ax plus b, and they're telling you a is negative 15, which is the slope, and b is 5,500, which is our y-intercept. If we just plug these things in, guys, so if I just plug in my negative 15 for a and my 5,500 for b, now I have the equation y equals negative 15x plus 5,500, which is my equation of the line. Okay, so we just want to answer the question on the rate of change. Remember, guys, the word rate of change means slope. Rate of change is slope. So just look at our equation of the line. From our equation of the line, there's my slope. So we would say it's negative 15. Now, if I asked you for the context of what this means, well, guys, really we can write this as negative 15 over 1, right? I'm just going to erase some stuff just so it's not so busy. Okay? So if we know that's really negative 15 over 1, remember it's the change in y over the change in x. So we have the change in 15 feet over 1 second. So we can see that this airplane is descending 15 feet a second. So the airplane is descending 15 feet per second. Okay? Well, what's the initial value, right? That's our y-intercept. What's the y-intercept? Come back to our equation. The y-intercept we identified as that 5,500. That was our b value. It's also given to you up here. That's 5,500. So putting this all together, we came up with our equation of the line, which we found by using our handy-dandy calculator. There is my equation of the line. Y equals negative 15x plus 5,500. All right, guys, I hope you found this video helpful. Stay tuned. We will be continuing with this for one more day in class, but please make sure you watch this video in full. This is a very, very important lesson, especially all those calculator tricks. If you guys need to go back, rewind, please do it, okay? This is a very, very important lesson.